Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Blue and I hope you're having a great day because I am. It was an exciting day for the mid-season invitational for Paladins. It is day 3. Today is when we got to see the PPL teams for the first time and the two PML teams that made it out of the cross-play play-in bracket into the main bracket with the other top 6 PPL teams. Now remember, the #1 PPL team, which is Ninjas in Pajamas, will be going up against Sauer team from the PML, and Penta, the PML team, was going up against Navi, which was the #2 PPL team. So let's go ahead and break right into it. Match #1, NIP versus Sauer team. Game 1, they went to Brightmarsh. Now, NIP was able to grab Torv and Makoa, and a lot of people said, you know, this draft doesn't need any more explanation. Well, the thing is that Torv and Makoa, or Torvald and Makoa, aren't that great of a tank duo anymore because Makoa is more like an off tank now, more so the offensive juggernaut on the side of the tanks instead of it being that main tank that it used to be, you know, when Leviathan was super strong before it got that CC nerf and all of that good stuff. So it's a little wonky, but it can work, and it ended up working for them. They went up 2-0. They ended up winning this game 4-0. Sauer only had 9 kills this entire game. They just weren't able to get any kills out. It was very difficult for them. NIP hit the gas pedal, especially with that Torv, and they pretty much just went on from there. Alex was on Drogos and Tenor was on Leon, so that was a little bit of a curveball thrown my way. In my opinion, I would have expected Tenor to be on the Drogos and Alex to be on the Leon, but both of these players have proven time after time this entire season that they can pretty much play a wide variety of champs respectively each. So wasn't that big of a curveball. It was just like, oh yeah, I think Tenor's going to be on Drogos here, and then it's like, oh, he's not. Wow, okay, well, he's a good Leon. And Alex is a good Drogos, and it showed. Sauer team had a more late game comp, and they eventually weren't able to get to the late game as that was a quick 4-0 in favor of NIP. They had the Genos, they had the Cassie, they had the Barrack, the Ashe, the Maeve, so they were really pushing towards that record coming into play, which it never did. Game 2, they went to Serpent Beach. Now, Sauer team banned Cassie. They did this in day 2 2 other times, I believe, if I remember correctly off the top of my head without checking my sheets. They banned Cassie twice, and this was because they wanted to take a lot of Genos heavy damage amp comps, and that's what they were running. And that was one of the things that I really didn't like from them. They kind of soured this entire set. They ended up losing 3-0 to NIP, but they really strayed away from their drafts that they were using in day 2 that really found them the success that they had, minus Penta beating them 3-1, but that one game, and in the games that they lost, they did find some success, and that was off the back end of triple DPS with that Genos. Now, I said yesterday, I don't believe Sheepa fits into a triple DPS as perfectly as you would want your off-tank flex to do so, but he was getting the job done. And we'll go into that here in a second. Game 3, they went to Jag Fall. Oh, first of all, on Game 2, Serpent Beach, Alex was on Eevee, Tenor was on Tyra. Tenor was basically just constantly babysitting Bird, who was playing Maldamba, and that provided a lot of sustain for not only Tyra, but for his tanks, because Maldamba's still alive. They were playing that side room on the payload push very beautifully, and Tyra was just not letting anyone get to his support, and that was just beautiful play between the two of them. And NIP really had the high ground control all game, and their positioning was beautiful on it as well. They were really able to zone out the rest of the team, especially on the capture fight. You know, a lot of people, they try to go towards that high ground a lot, and it really worked out for the side of NIP. They dominated that side of the map. They kept it to themselves, and they really were able to zone out efficiently. Game 3 went to Jag Falls. NIP drafted a Furia. We've seen that a couple times already in this tournament. And then they drafted a Dredge. That was the first time Dredge has come out in the MSI event. And it was triple DPS for Sauer, so they went back to it. But here's the thing about it. They had Ninu on Eevee. That's normal to me. They had Sheepa on Cassie and Perdeaux on Tyra. I think you need to switch those around. We saw Perdeaux play Cassie yesterday a few times. I think he needs to play that Cassie. Sheepa didn't have a very great game on Eevee yesterday, had a very decent game on Vivian yesterday, but did pretty well on the Tyra that he played yesterday. And I think it's much easier for an off-tank who has to play DPS and hasn't played it as consistently, as often as he would have probably have liked going into MSI. I think putting him on that Tyra would have been a better choice. Even if he dies, we saw this yesterday with Erase from Penta. He went 3-12 in game 1 of their set with Penta against Hype Unit, but that wasn't important. His KD wasn't important. What was important was he was getting that damage out consistently still. He was getting those hunting party marks out for his team to get that huge damage buff. And he was also, creating a lot of zoning potential with that firebomb as well. So I think if you put Sheepa on that Tyra that game, they would have done better. Now, Perdeaux was playing Tyra very, very well throughout this entire tournament for Sauer team as well, but I think he would have had to play the Cassie in that position, in my case. Overall, Sauer, like I said, they strayed away from their drafts that found them success in day 2 and day 1 of the tournament. NIP pretty much just hit the gas pedal and never let off. And Bonker, I just want to shout him out real quick. He's a good friend of mine. But also, he's a rare tank that can play main and off tank 3 different ways. Usually we see these main tanks that have to play off tanks, but they have that more main tank mentality. And then you have these off tanks that can play main tank, but they have that off tank mentality. And then there's those main tanks that know how to play off tank the off tank way, so they know how to do that. But Bonker kind of plays both 3 different ways. When he plays main tank, and he needs to be just the main tank, he can do that. If he plays an off tank and he needs to be just an off tank, he can do that. But if he plays an off tank, but they have like a Torv Makoa or a Torv Khan or something that's not really considered a main tank like an Inara or something big and beefy to soak up a lot of sustain, I think that he really knows how to do it very well. There was a game where he had to play Khan. He was able to play off tank very aggressively, but then be able to play the main tank and sustain himself on the objective at the same time. So shout out to him for that. Great play coming from Bonker. Moving on to match number 2, we had Space Station Gaming going up against Kanga, and this was actually a lot closer than a lot of people assumed it was going to be. I told you guys yesterday Kanga may be able to steal a game or 2, I think, and they were able to steal 1 away. SSG did win 3-1. But game 1, Serpent Beach, Kanga banned this map last time versus Space Station Gaming, and they tend to do so very often against them. They didn't do it this time, and SSG had first map pick, and right away Serpent Beach comes out, and Kanga ended up coming back and winning this game, however. But at first, it really showed why they do ban this map, and that is because SSG just plays it so dominantly. And this did go to a 3-3. Kanga was able to come out on top. Couple misplays at the beginning was the reason why. Chronix was on the Victor. This was very interesting. We've seen him play it a couple times before, and he really dominates with this champ, and he knows exactly how to play it in the PC universe. So shout out to him for that. But Ares' Maeve was doing a lot of work as well. That has come in clutch for a lot of teams this event, with that Midnight being able to push aggressively without the enemy team, especially early game with no resilience online. So no one really knows where you're coming from. Rhino, I want to shout out the play where Rhino hits the Ash ult, and something happened to him. I think he got lifted by Genos, and then he hit it again midair, and he landed on that little bird's nest next to one of the snake statues of the capture point. It actually stunned the Genos below him. That was pretty impressive. He had to reload eventually, so he wasn't able to kill the one-shot Genos, but he did wrap around, and luckily the Genos popped up in his face. He was able to kill him, so that just goes to show that Rhino was able to take it was a mistake. He didn't mean to do that at the beginning, but it was a bad play. But he was able to wrap it around and turn it into something good. So he made the best of the worst, in a sense to say. Game 2, we went to Warder's Gate. Kanga whipped out the Xin. It was played by Evil Eye, but he just couldn't find his stride on this. There was a moment that Pretty Hair pointed out he was shooting air for 15 seconds almost, and the gas pedal was just hit by SSG, Ares, FRZ God. They came up big that match. But game 3 on Shattered Desert, it comes down to Mitao. Mitao really did a lot of work here. He was playing the Furia, and he joined in on the DPS. At one point, he was out-fragging FRZ God. I think he finished with more frags than him eventually, but he was doing a lot of work for his team, and this is finally when Tyra comes into play as well. Tyra wasn't banned or picked in the first 2 games, so this was very interesting to me. You know, they're trying to get rid of Torvald. They're trying to get Genos for these damage amps. They have a Furia now on Shattered Desert, and there was no real Tyra coming into play. But Tyra did come into the game for the side of Kenga. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough for them to push for a W in this game. Game 4 on Stone Keep. Kenga got Torv this time, but Bomb King was stolen by SSG, and they had Tyra as well. So you weren't really able to, you know, Evil Eye is really comfortable on that Bomb King, and he would have liked to be that Bomb King paired with the Torv with a huge DPS potential. But unfortunately, as soon as that Torv was picked, Bomb King was taken off the board immediately after from SSG. Good drafting recognition from the side of Kresnik as the coach. If it wasn't Kresnik, okay, but you know, my point is, my POV, Kresnik did a great job stealing the Bomb King there away from Evil Eye and the Torv pocket. SSG, the entire squad this game was on fire, and they were not stopping for anything. Everyone was getting in on the action. FRZ guy was popping off on the Bomb King. Ares was going off as well, and they just had a good time. Overall, everyone on SSG had a game where they could show off that they were, you know, a top tier player. But I really want to shout out Richal and Sadak. They really stepped up with play after play together in tandem. And Richal was actually flexing the main and off tank and doing it super well. A lot of his stuff, you know, he got a lot of recognition during his game on Khan, but the games on Inara that he did very, very well managing his cooldowns, and something that a tank of his tier in the PPL should be able to do naturally. But I just love it when they're able to control games, they're able to control entire pieces of the map just because they can manage their cooldowns effectively. So Richal was doing great. And if I had to say anyone was lacking in this from the side of Kenga, I think it would have to be Evil Eye. I think Joel's really has stepped up over the past couple of weeks. And we're going to be doing a roster video for PPL, PML, and PCL, or a couple videos for each later on after the MSI. But I think Joel's really stepped up. Chronix is arguably the best player on Kenga, alongside Jera, I think, who played very well today as alongside Chronix. And then you have Rhino, who's like this young fragger. He's kind of like the Invocal, just he plays tank. And he's kind of stepped up as well. And I really think Evil Eye was the one who was lacking today. I think his champ pools is getting very limited as time goes by with this damage amp meta. And he had the Bomb King stolen away from him. He had a really tough game on the Xin as well. So he really needs to kind of broaden his horizon in the champ area and kind of step up his gameplay as well in itself. He is a great player, don't get me wrong, but right now he's just looking a little lackluster for the Kenga boys. So let's move on to match number 3, where we saw Navi versus Penta, and this is where the day gets crazy, okay? Because game 1 is on Bright Marsh. Penta come out the gate firing, capping the first point on all cylinders. They're looking crazy, and you know, everyone at home is probably like, okay, you know what? Hey, Navi gives up 1 point. Penta's played 2 days already. They got the bones flowing, you know. They got the juices running through their body. They're ready. They've done this for 2 days. They're warmed up. Navi's cold. Whatever, they'll come back. Well, Navi ended up defending that, but then Penta caps again, and they push it in, and it's 3-1. And this is when you start to worry, okay, it's 3-1. Navi needs to use comeback mechanic. They need to get back into this. You know that they're able to. They're arguably the best team, if not second behind NIP. And then Simsalou keeps winning his 1v1s with creatives. At the same time, Erase is going off on Cassie. And he's just limiting Mewtwo to what he can do and just keeping these tanks low health with this big game on Cassie. And they ended up winning that game 4-1. And that was insane. But it wasn't like super insane because like yesterday in the recap video, I said Penta might be able to steal a game, maybe even 2. Well, ended up they stole 3 games. They beat Navi 3-0, and this was impressive. On game 2, they went to Bazaar. Knessa comes out for the side of Navi, played by Mutu, and he had a really good game starting off early on. He was getting some nice shots. He got the insta-kill. The entire Navi came out the gate firing as well, and it was right off the back of Mutu's insta-kill on Vivian as soon as the map started, or the game started. But Penta was playing Vivian Wrecker late game versus the Torv Khan. And this is where it really came into play for the side of Penta. And Mutu started to have a lot of problems because Simsalou started to adapt mid-game on the Mave and was able to get to Mutu. And not only just get to him, he could keep his distance, but he was hitting these shots and positioning himself well so that he wouldn't get hit by the Knessa. It was forcing Mutu out of position or forcing Mutu out of the fight. Either one would work for the side of Penta. And Cruncy also was playing Ashe super well. Ashe was a big part in all the games today. Let alone just this game here on Bazaar or this set overall. Cruncy actually playing Ashe was able to position himself and draw the enemies away from the main portion of the fight. There was one where he ulted in the back line on Knessa and Spunky playing Damba. Didn't get any of them stunned, but the Inara wall came up and it kept them from not only getting to the objective, but it kept them from helping their team get those heals. And Knessa was also taken out of the fight. And Cruncy ended up killing one of them. And by the time that happened, everybody from Navi on the point was dead or about to be, if there was one person left maybe. And then Penta was able to just hit the gas pedal full zone and aggressively just push that payload in. They ended up winning that game as well. Game 3 went to Jag Falls, and Penta took Fernando 10th pick to counter the Drogos, and they didn't have a hit scan, so that was super huge to have that Drogos on the side of Navi. Here's the problem with Drogos on Jag Falls, in my opinion, though. I always think Drogos is a really good pick on Jag Falls when he has to defend or push the payload because he can position himself in numerous spots. He can play a lot of angles, and is really a dominant champion. But on that point fight, it's really hard for him to do that because if you go inside dark or light room, you know, on the left or right side of the point, you're kind of hurting yourself and taking away your mobility, right? The other thing is if you stay out of those rooms, you kind of either have to dive their backline or you have to stay in your backline, because if you go through the middle, it's kind of like this narrow passage that is just a firing hallway for you to get shot at. So you have to be a dominant Drogos player, and you have to know how to work Jaguar Falls' angles in the capture point a lot better than you would the payload push or defense. But Jag Falls, they took the Fernando 10th pick. Once the Drogos came out, they realized they didn't have a hit scan to take care of it. So they would have to find another way to kind of minimize Drogos' impact on this game. And they did so with the Fernando ult Immortal coming through. But Simsalou is back on Pip again. It got through the bans cycle. So Simsalou was able to play that again. He was getting a lot of chickens out. But the big man on campus this game was Accentra. And like I said yesterday, I know I've said that 4 times already, but as I said yesterday, Accentra, if you didn't know, if you didn't have, you know, the pre-information before this tournament began, before every time Penta steps up, if you didn't know Ovum was the main tank for this roster and Accentra was subbing in for him, you would think Accentra would be the main tank. No problems, no questions asked. He's looking like he's a PPL tier player right now, and he's looking like he's not a sub. He looks like he belongs in a lineup of this caliber, and it looks natural. He was getting doubles and triples on Inara. He was excellent walls. Actually, he had that really great wall. Phoenix was able to overpower him with Khan. He threw him off the map, and then Khan's standing on the edge, and he gets booped off the map because Inara puts a wall up as he's falling down. So, plus, if you watch that replay back, there's the angle Inara's at. It looks so hard to do that just right. So, props to him for that play. That's play of the tournament right there, just because. Overall, Accentra looks like a starter. Again, he did so yesterday as well. This time, even more so against a team like Navi. Simsalou and Erase, they go crazy on DPS again. Both of them had standout games. And then there was the Bazaar game where they, you know, Simsalou looked crazy on game 1. Erase did too, but more so Simsalou. Race looked crazy in game 2, and then Sims looked great in game 3 as well on the pip. And Phoenix and Lazy couldn't really find their footing. I think that was the problem for them there. Phoenix was having a really tough time trying to establish his dominance, and Lazy wasn't really able to set up shop on the objective and really create a sense of control in that area. So a great team in Navi, but they get upsetted by the PML team in Penta. Moving on to match number 4, where we saw another juggernaut go down. We had Envy versus VP or Virtus Pro. And these teams split the series. They faced each other 2 times in the phase 1 of the regular season. They both split a game apiece. But here's what I'm thinking going into this. I'm like, okay, VP is consistently bad more than they are consistently good. But Envy's also been on this roller coaster ride where they were defending champs. They were really bad. Then they were kind of bad, and now they're good. And the problem with Envy this season is that they're losing to teams that you would think they shouldn't lose to, and they're beating teams that maybe they shouldn't beat at this stage in the season. You know, like Envy coming off World Championship, beating NIP and Navi. Okay, that seems legit, but when they go 2-3 weeks with the play that they had, and then they beat an undefeated NIP a couple weeks later, you're like, okay, how? It's kind of weird, but they're still a great team. So is VP. The VP team, though, has a lot of different talent brought together, so it's going to take some time for them to ultra mesh together, like I said. But game 1, Bright Marsh, big ult usage came from the side of VP, and that's ultimately what helped them come back. They were losing this game 3-1, and they come back. Actually, throughout this entire set, it looked like VP was battling from behind. They could be up in the set, or they could be up in the game, but somehow it still looked like they were battling from behind. Rock Monkey and Random Noob were pretty much getting overwhelmed by VP's pressure once the comeback mechanic started to come into play in game 1. So that really took a toll on them. They had the Mave for Random Noob. They have Rock Monkey on the Cassie. A lot of Genos ults being able to poke Cassie out as well, so that was huge. Like I said, big ult usage from VP. Game 2 went to Stone Keep. Hakate ran the Cardio Victor. This was interesting, but I understand the point behind it. But here's the big thing. VP was winning the team fights, especially round 1. They won that team fight. They had that in the bag, but they still gave up the capture to Envy. So Envy was able to steal the capture away and to get around not really winning the team fights overall. Round 1 of game 2 was 7 minutes long, almost 7.5 minutes. So this was a pretty grinding game in itself. Rock Monkey started to find kills early on or late into round 1, and then he started to pick up even more, and that's when he got crazy. Ash came up big again today. I believe it was being played by Rubu that game. Have to check. Yeah, it was being played by Rubu, so he's one of the best off tanks in the game. So Ash came up big again, and Mave Midnights came up big this game because it was allowing free picks in favor of Envy. They would get those Midnights off, and VP really had nothing to counter that. Game 3, they went to Ascension Peak. Envy came out with triple DPS. Talkie was playing Cassie. This is really weird because Envy is really good at adapting to different strategies and playing different comps, but in my eyes, they don't look like a 3 DPS team because Rubu is not one of those off tanks that can play damage well enough to be that 3rd DPS. So they stick Talkie in it. Who's your main frontline? So then Rubu has to play main tank, and he can play main tank. But I don't think putting Talkie on the Cassie was the play here. Ended up not being the play as well, I believe. Or I think Envy actually won that game. No, VP won that game. So Envy came out the gate up 2-1 here. But Rubu was getting focused out as solo tank as well. They had the Genos. They have the Barrack being played by Rubu, so it was very difficult for him. On Ascension Peak, there's a lot of room for him to make. There's a lot of ways he can avoid damage without getting that heal immediately every single time, but unfortunately he was getting poked out super hard by the side of VP. They were able to recognize that, hey, they're playing solo tank. You know, they have damages to spare, but they don't have tanks to spare. Let's kill him. Vex, Pule Ule, and Dosips, they came up big in game 4 on Splitstone Quarry. Both drafts looked like comfort drafts for both teams, but VP had a little bit more comfortability coming into this, up 2-1 especially. Fish Echo was on the Bomb King, sorry, I drew a blank, and Hecate was on the Leon, and they started to rev up and provide tons of DPS, man. It started to come out in hordes, in what's that called? Bushels, bunches, whatever you want to say. They were coming out big with some damage that game. But Vex, Puleole, and Dosips, that last round of the game, this one they were battling from behind again, down 3-1, but they came back 3-3 and they ended up winning this game 4-3 off the back of those 3 players. They made some big plays in the last round to grab that capture, as well as Fisheko being able to stay alive there towards the end and kill some targets on the point. But overall, I think Hecate still has a small champ pool, but what he does play, he plays very well, and he did so today, and that showed. Fish Echo came up big on his comfort picks like Eevee and Bomb King, and Vex was bringing big plays and big ults on his side as well. Vex, I remember him being the substitute for G2 behind Cuss Cutie, and now Vex is kind of moving himself along as one of those top players in the league overall, not just top support players. And Dosips and Puleole, as the matches started to get longer and longer and as the set went on, they started to work in tandem more. And it's really weird because, you know, you have Dosips, who used to be an off tank, now he's playing main tank. And then you have Puleole, who used to be a main tank, now he's playing off tank. So it's kind of a weird vibe for me going on with those two, but they make it work, and eventually they got the win today, 3-1 for the side of VP. So 2 huge juggernauts going down from the PPL today. So let's take a look at our bracket heading into tomorrow. We have NIP going up against Space Station Gaming, and we have Penta versus Virtus Pro. Now, these are best of 7s, and so is the finals. So, I think Space Station is going to have their hands full with NIP. But, NIP is a very dominant team, yes. However, Space Station's really good at what they do, and that is switching up comps. Because, depending on the map, like Ares said, Ares can play some champs that FRZ can play. So, they can kind of flex and throw NIP off their game this time and say, oh man, who's going to be playing that? I don't know, because they can both play it. And they can also do it with the tanks as well. So that's super interesting for me. However, I still think NIP is so dominant. They beat Sauer Team 3-0. Now that's not the same as beating Kanga 3-1, but I think that Sauer does have some players on their side. They weren't able to put up against a fight against NIP, but it's not like NIP just, you know, coasted away. They still had to play those games. They still had to make some plays. But I have NIP beating Space Station, and I think this is going to go 6. I think Space Station is able to grab 2 games off NIP, so I think this is going to be a 4-2 in favor of NIP. Then when we come to Penta and Virtus Pro, these were both the underdogs coming into their round 1 matchups. I think Penta has the advantage here. Virtus Pro is really good. Now, that's been proven. They beat Team Envy. That's a really good team. That's a juggernaut, if you want to call them that. And VP would, again, in my eyes, be the underdog here. But they play better when they're the underdog, it seems. And they, all day today, it seemed like they were playing from behind, using that comeback mechanic. So if that comes into play against Penta, that could ultimately give them the advantage like it did today. But Penta is really good. And they have the aggression of a freight train. Once they get going, they just don't stop. And they can adjust mid-game as well as mid-round, just like we saw with Simsalou on that Mave against the Kinessa on Bazaar today. I have Penta beating Virtus Pro, but I think that one is not going to go 3-0 or 4-0. I think that one's going to go 7 games. I think Virtus Pro is going to be able to pull it out, and I think Penta's going to be able to pull it out in a grinding set. I think it's going to go 4-3 in favor of Penta. So that's it for me today and the day 3 recap. Tomorrow we'll have the day 4 recap and we'll know who wins the entire tournament as well. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at ConsoleProNews. We have full coverage as well happening on the consolecorner.co website. Both of those links will be in the description below, as well as the challenge bracket that you can actually vote for each matchup individually, and you can also, or no, you can't make your own bracket anymore, but you can still vote on who you think is going to win. The 2 favorites to win this tournament, one of them still in NIP. The other one was knocked out in Navi. So let me know in the comments below what you thought about day 3 of the tournament, which matchup was your favorite to watch, and who you think is going to win that is still left in the tournament. Keep grinding, everyone.